Yep, I agree. Some infinities are bigger than other infinities. So let's talk about change and continuity of empires. So in this early modern era, we see changes. Things don't stay the same forever. They don't stay the same for infinity. Okay? Okay, here we go. So these are all the empires of the early modern era. Right? We have Russia, a huge account. We have China. We have Mughal India. We have Safavid Persia. We have the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire stretches into Southeast Europe. We have France and the Netherlands and Britain and Spain and Portugal and Shanghai. We have these colonies, right? Brazil and the Incas at one point, the Aztecs, right? Eventually becomes Spanish, North America becomes British. All right, so these are all the empires. So let's talk about them, how they changed during this time period. So we see a lot of commonality, and it is the use of visual displays. How do you show off that you are legitimately in charge of your country? How do you show off and display your power? Well, you build monumental architecture. Duh. The ancient Egyptians did it, right, with their pyramids. The ancient Mesopotamians did it with their ziggurats. Well, the Mughals, they're going to build the Taj Mahal to show off their wealth. And the French, right, King Louis XIV, the Sun King, l'État est moi, right? The state is I am the state. He's going to build Versailles. In the Ottoman Empire, they're going to build the Suleiman Mosque or the Topopaki Palace. So by constructing monumental architecture, you show off your power and your wealth and you legitimize. We see new cities being built, right? The Tokugawa shogunate in Japan, they're going to build a brand new capital that they call Edo. Now we call it, of course, Tokyo. The Spanish are going to build new capitals in their colonies in the Americas, Lima in Peru, and Mexico City in Mexico. And of course, Russians are going to build St. Petersburg, right, by Peter the Great. So we see that constructing new capitals is going to legitimize your power, and it is also going to help strengthen yourself. Also showing off that you have, you're patronizing the arts. So Shakespeare, like the Queen Elizabeth of England, was a very big, supporter of Shakespeare. The Mughals painted a whole bunch of miniature paintings. So that's another way as well. So here we see Versailles, here we see the Taj Mahal, and there you have Shakespeare. All right. So that's one way rulers legitimize it. Of course, the other traditional one is religion. Use religion to say that I should be in charge. So a lot of the European monarchs are going to say, I have the divine right of kings. God chose me to be the king, and I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to answer to anyone except for God. Right? The French really like this idea. The Spanish really like this idea. The Russians also like this idea. Right? The constitutional monarchies, of the Netherlands and the British, they don't use this idea all that much. We see an entire empire focused on promoting a version or a sect of Islam, and that is, of course, Safavid Persia. They're going to say the Shia Islam or Shiism is the official, the only religion, the only version of Islam, that everything else is wrong. And they're going to go to war and they're going to persecute their own people to prove that point. Right? So by uniting the people under one religion, it is easy to control them, easy to get them to fight. The Aztec rulers, remember, the Aztecs are still up and running in the 1450s. They didn't collapse until 1510, 1520. So the Aztecs early on in this time period, they're going to be using human sacrifice to legitimize their rule, right? Getting those tribute payments. Songhai Empire, of course, is going to adopt Islam. The Ming and the Qing, they're going to continue using Confucianism. All right, so here we see those big fancy hats. Look at this image, the divine right of king. Look, it's like if God is putting the crown on the head of the king. That's awesome imagery. Awesome imagery. This is, of course, Suleiman the Magnificent. How can you tell? Because he has a big, fancy hat. The fancier the headgear, the more powerful the guy was. And, of course, some good old Aztec human sacrifice. All right. So these states that we're looking at, all these empires, they're going to have to deal with problems that every empire in history have had to deal with. And is, what do you do with your minority groups? Your ethnic minority groups, your religious minority groups, what do you do with them to keep them happy enough that they'll produce wealth for you, but they won't get powerful enough to challenge your authority? And different empires kind of came up with their own strategy. The Ottomans, they used the legitimize system. They used the system to kidnap young Christian boys from the Balkans, that is Southeast Europe, from the Christian population of the Balkans, and recruited them and converted them into Islam, recruited them into janissaries, and used them to fight wars for them or administer the government. They also collected the jizya tax from their Christian and Jewish populations. So you get money from them, right, through the jizya tax. You get service from them, from your minority groups with the Janissary Corps, but you keep them under enough control and you keep them happy enough by offering religious tolerance that they won't rise up against you. So the Ottomans kind of figured out this issue. The Manchus, remember the Manchus, they forced native Chinese to wear that weird looking Q haircut, which of course angered the Chinese, but at the same time they also opened up schools and expanded the civil service exam for more and more people than ever before. So you keep the people happy enough not to rebel against you, and if they're happy, they're producing, and the more they produce, the more wealth you get. It's a win-win. In the Latin America, the Spanish are going to use encomienda systems. Right? Remember, the encomienda is that the Europeans, the Spanish, own all the land, and all the people on the land are under their protection and under their guidance, and they're going to provide education and they're going to provide Christianity, and in return, the native population has to work without payment. So you're getting the people to work, but you are keeping them under control so that they don't rebel. Same idea. So different countries come up with different plans on how to deal with this problem, which is you have an increasingly diverse population around the world, and these empires are getting so big that they have a whole bunch of different people. So you got to keep them under control and keep them happy enough not to rebel against you. All right, so here we see again some of the images. This is a Qing emperor. Here we see the Spanish converting the natives, and this looks like a Christian Orthodox priest talking to some, probably, my guess, Ottoman Muslim official. All right, let's talk about bureaucracies and bureaucrats. Remember, you need a bureaucrat, or you need a bureaucracy, I should say, in order to have centralization. And all these empires want to centralize and have a strong military and a, evenly more important, a loyal military. All right. So for again, we mentioned this before. The Ottoman Empire is going to use the Devshirme system to create the Janissary Corps, which will create the elite fighting force of the Ottoman Empire. The Chinese are going to continue since the Han Dynasty of China in classical era. Continue to use the civil service exam, continue to use Confucianism to create the scholar gentry, right? And of course, the mandarins and the eunuchs being the elites of the scholar gentry. In Japan, they're going to tell the samurais, hey, you're not fighting anymore. Sit down and start learning stuff so you can become an administrator. So we see that new jobs are being created to be part of the government. Some of these are brand new, like the janissaries and the samurai are brand new. Some of them have been around since forever, like the civil service exam of China. So the point is that we see new additions to bureaucracies being created, and the goal of this is, of course, to keep centralized power for the rulers. Right. So here are the Ottomans. Right. This is the Janissary Corps with their funny hats. This is, of course, the civil service exam. And this awesome-looking guy is a samurai. He wouldn't have the armor. He wouldn't have the sword. He'll be having, paper and a book. Tax collection, tribute collection. That's still going to be a thing. That's a continuity because this is the main way you get money. So, for example, the Ming Chinese, they're going to get money through tributes paid to Zheng He, the famous Chinese explorer, right? The Spain and Portugal, they're going to have encomiendas, right, forcing the people to work and give their what they produce to the state, and the government would use that cash crop and sell it. Aztecs would use tribute systems, right, demanding luxury goods and food supplies if necessary, or slaves and sacrificial victims. Russia, they're gonna continue using serfdom. That's going to be a continuity. That's not going to end up into the 1800s. They're going to use serfdom. While in Europe, serfdom would have been banned by the 1500s. Money, right? It's all about money. You charge people taxes, you force people to work, they give you all the stuff, and you make more and more and more money, right? So again, we have it in India, we have it in China, we have it in Europe, we have it in the Americas. Every state is doing this as well. The big technology of this time, of course, is gunpowder, right? This is the early modern era, is the era of the gun, right? The Europeans, they're going to use their gunpowder to establish trading post empires. They're going to have trading posts in Africa, on the African coast. They're going to have trading territories in Asia. And the Europeans are going to use guns or use their access to guns to dominate, right? So the Portuguese are going to destroy the Swahili city-states of East Africa. The Dutch are going to force their way to control the islands of Indonesia and Southeast Asia and create a monopoly on the spice trade. We see that the Portuguese are going to, by supplying the neighbors of the Kingdom of Congo, they're going to lead to the collapse of Congo since they couldn't stop slave raids into their own territory. We eventually see Angola, right, who was protected by Queen Nzinga for a whole bunch of years. Angola, that territory in southern Central Africa, is going to become eventually a Portuguese colony. We see Shanghai in West Africa is going to get conquered by Morocco because they have guns, right? Moroccans are from North Africa. So even though the Europeans are only pretty much on the coast, right, and they're only dominating really the coastal areas of Africa, their dominance is going to have more widespread effects, right? So the interior of Africa is also going to be affected. West, Central, Southern Africa, East Africa. All these interior, right? Not the coast, but in the inside of Africa, the interior is going to be affected as well, indirectly though. And again, the Europeans are able to do this, have this power through guns, right? And here we see some of the fortresses of the for slave trade. These are found on the coast of, the Atlantic coast of Africa. And this is where the Europeans would set up, right? These are the trading posts that the Europeans would set up. Now, the land empires are all going to grow during this time. So the Mughals, for example, they're going to rule, India. And remember, India, hasn't been united under one centralized authority since the classical era, since the Mauryan Empire, Emperor Ashoka and stuff. So it will take, 800 years, 900 years for the Mughals to finally come in. Because remember, before the Mughals, you only had the Sultanate of Delhi, but that was only in northern India. The Mughals control almost all of India. The Ottomans, right? They're going to control throughout the Middle East, throughout the Mediterranean, North Africa, Eastern Europe, right? A region called the Balkans. They're going to expand their territory, again, using guns, Russia is going to go all over Siberia and into Eastern Europe, right, into Poland, where they're going to get a large Jewish population and, carry out massacres of Jews and pogroms. So Russia's going to expand using guns. The Manchus, the Qing, right? They're going to conquer China. They're going to expand Chinese territories into Tibet, Vietnam, Korea. They're going to go into Mongolia and push the Mongols even further away. So all these land empires are going to expand using these technologies, right? And the better the weapons, the more successful your empire will be. And here we see some of those massive, right? Huge, right? The maritime empires, right? With the exception of, say, like Spain, all of them are tiny, right? All the European empires are tiny during this time. All right, so here we see the Manchus, right? The Manchus, again, they came up from the northern part of what we now call China. They invaded, they created they took over the capital, Beijing, right? Here you see the Great Wall that the Ming Dynasty finalized, right? They're going to conquer Mongolia, they're going to conquer Tibet, right? This is all pushing into Central Asia territory. You see the Mughals, right? With the exception of the southernmost tip, right? All these territories where these regions were added by the Mughal Empire. Right here we see the awesome Taj Mahal, right? The Persian domes, right? The towers are Arabic or Muslim, right? All the little drawings and paintings and relief sculptures on the walls, that's Hindu, right? Here you have syncretic architecture. Here we see the Ottoman Empire, right? Remember the Ottomans, they even attacked Vienna, right, in Central Europe. The Europeans were absolutely scared of the Ottomans, right? During the time of Suleiman the Magnificent, right? They're going to go into Baghdad, right in Mesopotamia, right, Iraq, and fight with the Safavids that are right next door. The Russians are going to expand all over Siberia, right? They're going to go into St. Petersburg right there, right? So they're going to go from the Baltic Sea all the way over here, right, to the Pacific Ocean, to the Arctic Ocean. Here we see a famous, Eastern Orthodox cathedral, right, in Moscow. Remember, Moscow is much more Russian than St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg is much more Western European in style than Moscow is. All right, so the Latin empires are big and bad, but the European maritime empires are going to grow in size and wealth and power. Portugal, of course, is going to have a whole bunch of trading posts, but their main colony is going to be Brazil. All right, those sugar plantations are going to pump a lot of money into Portugal. Spain is going to have territories everywhere, but the main ones are going to be the Philippines, right, in Southeast Asia, the territories in South America, right, Latin America, and the Caribbean. And the Dutch, their main thing is going to be the East Indies, right, what we call Indonesia, Southeast Asia. They're also going to have a territory in South Africa that the British are eventually going to take away from them, though. France, they're going to have territories in Africa and India, in Canada, and in Haiti, right, in the Caribbean. The British are going to have trading posts everywhere, right, from Africa to India. They're going to have colonies in South Africa. They're going to have colonies in North America, the Caribbean, Australia, New Zealand. And even though Britain is not there yet, by the next time period, Britain will become the largest empire ever, even bigger than the Mongols. Mongols number 2, Britain number 1. All right, so these are the maritime empires. Here we see the territories that these people had. Right? I mentioned in Angola earlier, right? In Central, Southern Africa, right? That was the Portuguese territory. All the little islands, all the little city-states, right, on the East Coast, like Mombasa, those would have been under Portuguese territory as well. Here we see the Spanish, right, the Philippines are off the coast of China, major trade going on back and forth between these two areas. Here you have, again, the Castas paintings we've mentioned before. These are the Dutch, right? They have little territories here, in South America and South Africa, but this is the big one, right, the East Indies. The Dutch East Indies. I remember the Dutch are the only ones trading in Japan at the end of this time period. They're going to be trading up here in Japan. The British, here we see the British Empire. at its height. Right, it's not there yet, but it will get there, and it will control, a big chunk of the world um, at different times. Here's the French Empire, right? Canada, Louisiana, right? These territories. They're going to have parts of India as well, Southeast Asia. They're going to go into Vietnam as well. Here we see, of course, the beautiful Palace of Versailles. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about conflicts and fighting. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why people fight. Let's talk about them. One of them is going to be money. So the Spanish are going to load their big galleon ships filled with silver, and that's going to cause the British, the French, the Dutch, and everyone else to try to steal. So we see a lot of piracy in the Caribbean. Yes, I know. Pirates of the Caribbean. Yes. Yeah. Anyways, that's going to be a big thing as well. We see that the Europeans are going to fight against the Turks in the Indian Ocean, right? There's one of those naval battles, and the Europeans eventually end up winning, again, because they have better technology, better warfare. Competition for trade is going to lead to the destruction of the Swahili city-states. They don't have guns, they're going to get blown up. Thank you, Portugal. Indonesia, I mentioned them before, how the Dutch are going to conquer Indonesia, set up the spice trade, or monopolize the spice trade, and again, because they have the guns and the Indonesians do not. War is often going to be a result of religious issues. The two kind of major wars during this time that are a result of religion is going to be the 30 Years' War that you see here on your left, and that's between the Catholics and the Protestants all over Europe, especially though in Germany, right? Oh, back then it was called the Holy Roman Empire. So there's a reason why we don't talk about the Holy Roman Empire, and the reason why the Holy Roman Empire isn't a maritime empire like Spain and Portugal and France. And the reason is because they were too busy fighting and killing each other than, exploring the world. Part of the reason the Ottomans and the Safavids don't expand further, right, or don't trade as much is because they're fighting all the time as well. Shia versus Sunni. So we have religion, and of course, territorial expansion. Places like Mesopotamia is a big hotbed for fighting. So war and territory and religion will lead a lot of fighting just as well. We also see peasant uprisings. That means that the common people, the peasants, the serfs, even the slaves at different times, they're going to revolt and they're going to rebel. And the governments have to go out of their way to put these rebellions down. So the Russian serfs are going to rebel all the time against the boyars because the boyars had absolute power over those peasants. Right? And the serfs will fight back, and many times the Russian Tsar, like Catherine the Great, would come in and send in the military to squash the rebellions. Chinese peasants. Remember, the Chinese peasants rebelled against the Ming Dynasty during the Little Ice Age, right? Thanks to all the famine and the crappy food production and the starvation and the disease, right? And the peasants rebelled and said, "We don't want the Ming." And then the Manchus said, "Okay, we'll come in." They took over. We know that the Amerindians and the Africans, Native Americans and Africans, they will rebel and revolt against slave owners all the time. Right? They were never successful, at least not yet, but they never were successful. Right? Many times they would just run away. Right? Remember, there was a term called the Maroon Societies, where Africans and Indians ran away into the jungles of South America and hid and created these kind of hidden societies, hidden communities, right? Just to avoid the slave labor. So there's a lot of external war between countries, but a lot of internal conflicts between the different classes of people in a society. All right, so that is it for our fourth and final part of our Unit 4 review. Thanks for watching. Good luck on your exam. I hope you understand everything about Unit 4 because you're going to need it. See you then. And may the force be with you.